All right, good morning. We're going to talk about 1.9 opposites and absolute values. Okay, the objective is to use opposite and absolute values to simplify or to find answers here. Okay, when we talk about opposites real quick, okay, opposites are going to be like the same distance away from zero. Okay, so if I'm looking at a number line here, if I have 0, and to the right are our positive numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4. To the left would be our negative numbers, -2, -3, -4. Okay, so if I look, 1 and -1 are opposites because they're both 1 unit away from 0. Okay, 2 and -2 are opposites because they are 2 units away from 0. Okay. So each number in a pair, such as 4 and -4, are called opposites of the other number, okay? If A is positive, then its opposite is negative, so negative A, okay? If A is negative, its opposite, and opposite is always labeled with this negative in the front there, that means opposite. So if A is negative, its opposite will always be positive. If A is 0, then its opposite is going to be 0 also. Okay? The opposite of a negative A is A. That is, a negative A is equal to the positive A. Okay? So example 1, simplify. So it's asking for the opposite of the quantity of 7 plus 9. So if we took 7 plus 9, because it's inside our parenthesis, 7 plus 9 is 16. So then the opposite of 16 is -16. B is asking for the opposite of -1.8. So the opposite of a -1.8 is a positive 1.8. Example 2 says to evaluate the opposite of n plus 14 if n is equal to -8. So as we plug that in, so it's asking for the opposite of n, and my n is -8 plus 14. So the opposite of -8 is a positive 8, and a positive 8 plus 14 is 22. All right, absolute value. Absolute value is going to be the distance away from 0. And if we talk about distance, distance is always positive, okay? It's always positive because whether you walk forward or walk backwards, you're still getting a positive distance. You're still adding miles onto your steps, okay? The absolute value is denoted with these bars, so the absolute value of A. If A is positive, then the absolute value of A is A. If A is negative, the absolute value of A is negative A, is the opposite of A. And if A is 0, the absolute value of A is 0. Okay. All right, so simplify. So we're looking at the absolute value of -7 plus the absolute value of 5. Okay, the absolute value of -7 is 7 units away from 0, so it's 7, plus the absolute value of 5 is 5 units away. So then 7 plus 5 is 12. Now, if this was the absolute value -7 plus 5, since the problem, the addition problem, is inside the absolute value, we do that first. So -7 plus 5 is -2, and the absolute value -2 is 2. Okay. B here, the absolute value -15, that's the only thing inside, so the absolute value of -15 is 15, plus, then we have 8 absolute value of -3, so that represents multiplication. So 8 times, what's the absolute value of -3? Is 3. Okay, now following orders of operation, we're going to do that multiplication first. So 8 times 3 is 24, And then 15 plus 24 is 39. Now, when we look at absolute value and we need to solve for that x, we have to think about, remember, the absolute value is the distance away from 0. So what number is 3 units away from 0? Well, if you think of a number line, okay, if 0's here, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, -1, negative, +1, +2, +3, -1, -2, -3. So if I'm looking at what is 3 units away from 0, we have 2 numbers. So we have a +3 and we have a -3. So when we look at solving the absolute value, we should always have 2 answers because we're looking at the absolute value of what number is 3 units away from 0. Well, we have a +3 and we have a -3. Because if I throw in 3 in here, the absolute value of 3 is 3, and the absolute value of -3 is also 3. So we actually have 2 solutions here of 3 and -3. Okay? And if you guys need help, let me know.